Alright folks, today we're talking about one of the wildest rides in NBA history, the rise and fall of Jeremy Lin. Buckle up, because we're diving into Linsanity, where undrafted point guards become overnight sensations, only to have the NBA grind them back down to earth. It's the basketball equivalent of a Cinderella story, except Cinderella has to play defense against LeBron James. Let's set the scene. Jeremy Lin was born on August 23, 1988, in Torrance, California. Now, Lin wasn't just your average kid shooting hoops at the park. He was the kid shooting hoops, then heading home to ace his calculus homework. He was the ultimate overachiever. And as the son of Taiwanese immigrants, he was also breaking stereotypes left and right. Jeremy's parents were supportive of his basketball dreams, but like many immigrant families, they also valued academics and encouraged him to consider stable career paths, like becoming a doctor or engineer. Asian American basketball stars? Pretty rare. Asian American basketball stars who make it to the NBA. Unicorn territory. Lin's path to the pros was anything but conventional. He was a high school standout at Palo Alto High. But despite leading his team to a state championship and being named first-team All-State, no Division Dunche, school offered him a scholarship. Nada. Zip. Zero. It's like everyone looked at him and thought, nah, he's probably better at math than layups. So, Lin went to Harvard. And yes, Harvard has a basketball team. It's not just libraries and debates over Nietzsche, they play ball there too. Lin crushed it at Harvard, averaging 16.4 points and 4.4 assists per game as a senior. But even then, no NBA team wanted him. In 2010, he went undrafted. Let's pause here for a second. Imagine graduating from Harvard, where you're probably smarter than half the coaches in the league, and still, no one gives you a shot. Brutal. But Lin didn't quit. He signed with the Golden State Warriors as an undrafted free agent. And here's where things get spicy. Lin wasn't exactly lighting it up in his rookie season. He barely got off the bench. The Warriors waived him in December 2011, and then the Houston Rockets picked him up and waived him 2 weeks later. That's like being dumped twice in 1 month. Harsh. Now let's fast forward to the New York Knicks, January 2012. The Knicks were struggling. Carmelo Anthony was out with an injury, and Amare Stoudemire was dealing with personal issues. On top of that, their point guard rotation was a mess. Enter Jeremy Lin, the third-string point guard who was crashing on his brother's couch because he wasn't sure he'd stick with the team. Imagine going from couch surfing to Madison Square Garden in the span of a week. Lin's first breakout game was on February 4, 2012, against the New Jersey Nets. He came off the bench and immediately made an impact, scoring 25 points, dishing out 7 assists, and grabbing 5 rebounds. Lin was fearless, driving to the basket, finishing through contact, and even knocking down mid-range jumpers. The Knicks won, and suddenly everyone was asking, wait a minute, who is this guy? The magic continued in the next game against the Utah Jazz. Starting for the first time in his career, Lin poured in 28 points and orchestrated the offense with precision, leading the Knicks to another victory. Then came the Wizards, where Lin dropped 23 points, showcasing his ability to push the tempo and dominate the pick and roll. But the pinnacle of his heroics was Valentine's Day against the Toronto Raptors. The game was tied in the final seconds when Lin coolly dribbled up the court, drained the clock, and launched a clutch three-pointer that silenced the Raptors crowd. It was a moment straight out of a movie. Twitter exploded, sports talk shows couldn't shut up about him, and Knicks fans finally had a reason to believe again. Even Kobe Bryant had underestimated Lin. Before a game against the Knicks, Kobe was asked about Lin's recent performances, and famously said, "I don't even know what he's done. Like, seriously, I have no idea what you guys are talking about." Well, Lin let his game do the talking. On February 10, 2012, in a nationally televised game against Kobe's Lakers, Lin exploded for 38 points, weaving through defenders and hitting tough shots from everywhere on the court. He showcased his fearless drives to the basket, sharp passing, and clutch shooting. The Knicks won, and the Garden was electric. It was a statement game, one where Lin proved he could not only hang with the best, but outshine them on the biggest stage. And let's not forget his stats during that stretch. Over 10 starts, Lin averaged 23.9 points and 9.2 assists per game. That's elite company. What made Lin so effective during this run? First, his pick and roll expertise was phenomenal. He had a knack for reading defenses and making the right decision, whether it was driving to the basket, pulling up for a mid-range jumper, or dishing it to the roller. His basketball IQ shone through as he orchestrated the Knicks offense with poise. Lin's ability to get to the rim was another strength. He wasn't the fastest or the most athletic player on the court, but his quick first step and crafty finishing allowed him to score against taller, stronger defenders. Lin's sudden rise wasn't without its challenges in the locker room. Carmelo Anthony, known as a high-usage scorer, reportedly struggled to adapt to Lin's ball-dominant playing style, which the offense revolved around during Linsanity. Meanwhile, Amare Stoudemire publicly praised Lin, but later admitted it was an adjustment, seeing the spotlight shift to a relatively unknown player. Off the court, Lin became a cultural icon. He was on the cover of Time magazine, the first Asian American NBA player to get that kind of attention. He broke barriers and inspired millions. It wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about representation. Lin was proof that someone who didn't look like your typical NBA star could make it big. But here's the thing about being a Cinderella story. Midnight eventually strikes. Lin's weaknesses became apparent as teams began to scout him more closely. Defensively, he often struggled to stay in front of quicker guards and sometimes gambled too much, leading to breakdowns. Consistency was another challenge. While he could explode for 38 points one night, there were games where his jump shot deserted him and his turnovers piled up under defensive pressure. These vulnerabilities were part of what eventually tempered the Linsanity frenzy. For Lin, that moment came when the Knicks faced the Miami Heat in March 2012. The Heat's defense, led by LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, completely shut Lin down. He had 8 points on 1 for 11 shooting, with 8 turnovers. Ouch. It was like watching a high schooler try to play against grown men. The Heat exposed Lin's weaknesses and put it on display in front of the entire country. The final nail in the coffin for Linsanity came when Lin tore his meniscus in late March, ending his season. The Knicks made the playoffs but got bounced in the first round. By the time Lin recovered, the Knicks faced a critical decision. Should they re-sign the player who had brought so much excitement to Madison Square Garden? Ultimately, they chose not to match the Houston Rockets' 3-year, $25 million offer sheet. The decision came down to financial and strategic concerns. The contract included a hefty poison pill provision in the 3rd year, which would have significantly increased the Knicks' luxury tax bill. Team management, led by then GM Glenn Grunwald, decided it wasn't worth the risk, especially with questions about Lin's long-term durability and ability to sustain his performance. The move shocked Knicks fans, many of whom felt the franchise had let go of their most electrifying player since Patrick Ewing. For Lin, it marked the end of the magical chapter that was Linsanity and the beginning of a journeyman career. Leaving New York also meant losing the stage that had amplified his rise to stardom, making it harder to recapture that same level of influence and performance. And just like that, Linsanity was over. Lin's career after New York was, well, a mixed bag. He played for the Rockets, Lakers, Hornets, Nets, Hawks, and Raptors. There were flashes of brilliance, like when he averaged 11.7 points and 4.4 assists per game for the Hornets in 2015-16. But he never regained the magic of those few weeks in New York. Injuries didn't help either. He tore his patellar tendon in the first game of the 2017-18 season, which pretty much derailed his career. When you're in the spotlight, controversy usually follows, and Lin was no exception. During his time with the Nets, Lin experimented with dreadlocks, sparking a bit of controversy. Some critics accused him of cultural appropriation, while others, including Lin himself, argued it was an expression of admiration and respect for Black culture. Lin handled the situation thoughtfully, addressing the concerns publicly, and even having an open dialogue with former NBA player Kenyon Martin, who had initially criticized him. By 2019, Lin was out of the NBA. He signed with the Beijing Ducks in the Chinese Basketball Association, where he put up solid numbers but didn't exactly dominate. Off the court, however, Lin remained active and impactful. He launched the Jeremy Lin Foundation, which focuses on empowering underprivileged communities and addressing social issues like poverty and education inequality. Lin also became a vocal advocate for mental health, sharing his struggles with the pressures of professional sports. Lin often spoke about the challenges of living under a microscope during the height of Linsanity, where every move he made was scrutinized by fans and media alike. The pressures and expectations were overwhelming at times, Lin admitted in an interview. It felt like no matter what I did, it was never enough. The subsequent decline in his career added another layer of mental strain, as Lin faced injuries and a reduced role on teams. He openly discussed the feelings of isolation and self-doubt that came with being in the spotlight and then stepping away from it. Lin's transparency on these issues resonated with many as he became a voice for athletes navigating similar struggles. In addition to his philanthropic work, Lin made various media appearances, including interviews and documentaries that highlighted his journey and the broader challenges faced by Asian Americans in sports. He played a significant role in promoting diversity and representation, using his platform to inspire the next generation of athletes. Lin's story transcended basketball, becoming a symbol of perseverance and breaking barriers. In 2021, Lin attempted an NBA comeback with the Golden State Warriors G League affiliate, but didn't make it back to the big league. It's like the basketball gods were teasing him. Hey, remember when you were the king of New York? Yeah, those were the days. So, what do we make of Jeremy Lin's story? Is it a cautionary tale about the fleeting nature of fame? Or is it an inspirational story about breaking barriers and making the most of your moment? Honestly, it's both. Lin had a peak that most players can only dream of, even if it was short-lived. He showed the world that an undrafted player from Harvard could take over the NBA, even if only for a few weeks. And let's not forget the impact he's had off the court. Lin has been vocal about the racism and stereotypes he's faced throughout his career. He's used his platform to advocate for Asian American representation and social justice. That's a legacy that goes far beyond basketball. So yeah, Jeremy Lin's rise and fall might not have ended with a Hall of Fame induction or a string of championship rings, but it's still one of the most unforgettable stories in NBA history. Linsanity was a reminder that sports can be magical, that anyone can defy the odds, and that sometimes, for just a little while, the underdog gets to be king.